Yeah. Hey everybody, it's the very first edition of Matt's Metal Show. Sitting here on the couch, just gonna talk about some metal today. I thought we'd get to know each other a little bit. Threw up some props if you guys check it out. I got Gene Simmons over here. I got Bob Daisley's For Fact's Sakes, which if you haven't picked that up, you need to if you love metal at all. Bob Daisley was with Gary Moore, and of course he was with Blizzard of Oz and Rainbow and everybody else. He's totally amazing. Tribute, of course, because I got my little Metallica skull there. And if you look closely, that's a cover of Bark at the Moon, and it's autographed by Ozzy. When I was 14 years old, Ozzy showed up in town, and he made an appearance at Tower Records in El Cajon. And of course, I was so into Ozzy that my mom knew that if she didn't give me permission to ditch school, like I was going to do it anyway, or my entire life would have been ruined forever and ever and ever. So she let me ditch school, and we went down, and I believe it was like March 31st, 1984. And I went down there with my buddy Spencer, who was into Ozzy. I don't think he was into Ozzy like I was into. I don't think anybody was into Ozzy. Like, I mean, I loved Ozzy. I was like, used to write Ozzy on my hand, and I just lived Ozzy. I remember I almost got kicked out of school when I was in junior high for bringing Speak of the Devil to school and playing it at lunchtime. And then the principal took offense to the album cover, and then he called my mom and told her I would worship the devil or something like that. Anyways, funny story. We go down, we get in line. They had closed the entire store down. And then, they lined us up and they'd feed us in the front of the store. We'd meet Ozzy, and then they would shuffle you out the back of the store into this little back street behind the store. So I go in, and there's Ozzy. Ozzy sitting there in a chair behind this table, and he had a white shirt on. I remember you could see his tats through his shirt, and his hair was bleached out, blonde. And he just looked at me, and he was like, "Hello, mate. I'm Ozzy Osbourne." And that sounded kind of like Ringo. My real name's Richard Starkey. Anyways, I remember I Wayne's Worlded him. I was like, and so, he kind of just signed the album and handed it to me, and then the folks at KGB kind of shoveled me out the back door. And it was funny because I remember looking over because my buddy Spencer came walking up behind me, and we were out in the back of the store, just outside the door. And I look over, and he's got this little picture of Ozzy, singing, and it says, "To Spencer, you're my best friend in the whole wide world, Ozzy Osbourne." And then me, who's like the biggest Ozzy fan of all time, I got Ozzy Osbourne. So it kind of dawned on me what I had done, and so I was like, I turned to go back in. Of course, they wouldn't let me back in, so yeah. So I went to the show that night. It was one of the first concerts I went to. My uncle bought me tickets for Christmas, and we had like 12th row, and Rat opened, and it was an amazing show, and that was one of the first shows ever. So anyways, hey, we're gonna go over some albums today, just kind of get to know each other. And speaking of the Ozman, we're gonna go ahead and talk about Diary of a Madman. I couldn't find the cover to Blizzard of Oz because I don't keep a lot of CDs around anymore. Everything's digital. But favorite two albums probably of all time: Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman. Back in the day in 1979, early 80, these guys got together in England. Randy Rhoads, Bob Daisley, Lee Kerslake, and Ozzy got together, and they were in a band called The Blizzard of Oz, and they came out with Blizzard of Oz. They actually toured in the UK under the name The Blizzard of Oz. And then, some infighting and stuff and some shady deals. And they ended up recording Diary of a Madman with the same crew. And then, of course, Lee and Bob got kicked out of the band and shafted. And then they put in Tommy and Rudy and packaged Diary up. And I think I actually have the picture here. Yeah. Oh, yeah, look. Hey, it's Rudy and Tommy. They did not play on the album. We know that. A lot of people don't, but they do. Anyways, Blizzard of Oz, I had the album. I played it on turntable. I used to put these big giant headphones on and sit there in my mom's living room and play that album just over and over and over and over and read the lyrics and just be blown away by it. Of course, back then I was under the impression that Ozzy actually wrote the lyrics, which turns out it wasn't Ozzy at all, because Ozzy doesn't really write lyrics. He didn't write anything in Sabbath. That was all Geezer, and Bob wrote all the lyrics, so they're amazing. I don't know, Crazy Train, Goodbye to Romance, even though it's like a heavy metal album, they toned it down. They played Goodbye to Romance, which was amazing. And then on into D and Suicide Solution, of course, Mr. Crowley, No Bone Movies, Revelation, Mother Earth, and Steal Away the Night. Every song on there is amazing. I'm going to say amazing about 400,000 times because that's my favorite word. But and then Diary was just that next step. They felt a little bit more comfortable going back into the studio. Randy was doing a lot more overdubbing and doing tracking and doing triple and quadruple guitar work over it. And it just sounded, the tone on that album was so rich and so full and just dark and brooding, and just, you listen to like You Can't Kill Rock and Roll and Diary of a Madman and Flying High Again, Over the Mountain, and you just, Little Dolls. Oh, wow. It's just amazing, right? That's like the third time I said amazing, but, we don't have a lot of Randy. It's the digital age, so I tend to clump all my Randy together, throw in You Looking at Me, Looking at You from the B-side of Crazy Train, and You Said It All from the live Mr. Crowley picture disc, and that's pretty much all there was. There's that little blurb on the new version of Blizzard of Oz where Randy's doing his solo, and that's pretty much all we had. I mean, we have the live album of Tribute, which is cut up shows from even some of the UK stuff, like No Bone Movies, I think was from the UK stuff with Lee and Bob, and I don't think they even got paid for that, so weird. You go back and look at the Quiet Riot stuff, but why? I mean, there's really no need to. If you read in Bob's book, even Randy was a little embarrassed of that stuff. I know there's a lot of Rhodes fans out there. They call themselves Roadies. They're a good group of people. They love Randy. They love music. But, if we want to be honest with each other, great guitar player and a mediocre band. The lyrics really cheesy. There was a reason why it only came out in Japan. So, let's be honest. Anyways, Moving Pictures by Rush. If you don't think Rush is heavy metal, hard rock, listen to the first album. Listen to those riffs that Alex is doing on Working Man, and he's wailing. Rush started out in the beginning, and they moved in. Everything that they were moving towards was Moving Pictures. Moving Pictures, to me, is their perfect album. Got to watch them a couple years ago. They actually did Moving Pictures in its entirety, like live. Even played through the camera eye, which was amazing. They came so close with Permanent Waves, but it was just off like a hair, just a hair. But like Moving Pictures, I remember sitting there and they played Tom Sawyer, and then all of a sudden they played Red Barchetta, and I was like, wait a second. And then YYZ, and then Limelight, and I was like, no way. And then, yeah, they played the whole thing, so that was incredible. Every single song on there is awesome, and so huge Rush fan, seen them a bunch of times. Just some of the best musicians ever. Geddy's voice, a little, some people don't like it, but hey, Rush is Rush, and dude, Rush is awesome. Let's talk Holy Diver. Holy Diver! Let's show you something here. Oh! Yeah. a little bit of a Dio fan. Holy Diver. Funny thing about Holy Diver, just like with Blizzard of Oz, Iommi from Sabbath, every time he pissed off his lead singer, they either got fired or quit. They would come out with one of the most phenomenal albums ever. So we got Blizzard of Oz from Ozzy when he got ejected from Sabbath. I don't know if Ronnie quit or was fired. I know there was this big hoopla about Live Evil and the mix and warring amongst each other. But we got Holy Diver out of that. We got Deep Purple's Perfect Strangers out of Ian Gillan after he left. And then Ray Gillan left, and we got Badlands with Jakey Lee. It was a great album. So, Tony, keep pissing your lead singers off. Holy Diver, I love Last in Line too. Okay, I love them both, but Holy Diver's flawless. Ronnie was angry. You could tell he was angry. You could tell he was angry at Blackmore. He was angry at Iommi, and it just came out in his vocals, and they were just belting, just knocking you down. And Vivian Campbell was shredding, playing like 100,000 miles an hour, trying to prove himself. He was playing with a chip on his shoulder, but he was talking about Yngwie and Eddie Van Halen and all those other guys, and he wanted to prove that he had the licks as well. And of course, he stole Vinny Appice from Sabbath. He came on board, and then he had Jimmy Bain from the old Rainbow days, and just from beginning to end, straight through the heart. Really. Gypsy, she was straight from hell, but you never could tell 'cause you were blinded by her light. Yeah, that was my Ronnie impersonation. I'll try never to do that again, but I'm not making any promises here. Invisible, jeez. Rainbow in the Dark, of course. Don't Talk to Strangers, Shame on the Night. That album's wow. And then, even Last in Line. I mean, I saw them in 1984, and we had front row, me and my buddy George, and we used to know this guy. His name was Vinny. He was a scalper. He was totally like the guy that was straight out of like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He's like, 2 for Earth, Wind, and Fire for Jefferson and Little Brother. Debbie, you're looking good. Isn't this great? Anyways, we would bump into him, and we would have tickets already, and we'd give him our tickets and like $10, and he'd give us really great seats, and he gave us front row for the Last in Line tour with Dokken opening. And I remember, they have the DVD from the Spectrum at Philly, and they show the entire show. And if you watch it, there's that part in Heaven and Hell where Ronnie used to add on that extra part where he was like, and a little white shape looked up at me, and, heaven is where you want to be. Come with me, and I'll show you what to do. And he said, no, I want to burn in hell with you and you. And Ronnie would point, and fire would come up out of the stage like 20 feet high. And I remember we were standing in the front row, and like just like I felt like the guy from Indy Jones when they opened the Lost Ark. They were like, but it was all for rock and roll, so we stood strong. But anyways, I digress. Let's talk about with this one. I don't have the album cover because I think I got the digital version a long time ago. Shout at the Devil by Motley Crue. And the thing is that a lot of my musician buddies back in the day, they used to give me a bunch of crap because I always liked Motley Crue. And let's face it, Motley Crue's awesome. I love Motley Crue. I've seen them a bunch of times. I just saw them on their last farewell, what I thought was their farewell tour, but apparently they're coming back again to San Diego, so it's the farewell part of the tour. Who knew? Stretching it out there a little bit. I just remember when I was 13 and I went out at night to meet one of my buddies down the street from the house and, shoot the shit or whatever, and he had a beach cruiser with a boombox, like a ghetto blaster, like duct taped to the handlebars. And I remember going up, and he was like, "Dude, you got to hear this." And he presses play on this thing, and in the beginning comes out, In the beginning, good always overpowered the evils of all man's sins. But in time, the nations grew weak, and our cities fell to slums as evil stood strong. See, they should have got Sean Connery to do that. That would have been pretty cool. Haven't you ever lost anything like your car keys? Anyways, I remember hearing that and just going, who are these guys? You know, and then busted into Shout at the Devil, Looks at Kill, Too Young to Fall in Love, 10 Seconds of Love, Danger. Danger's like one of my favorite teenage angst songs, you know. Tattooed Lies, what a great lyric. That album's flawless. Even, you know, Helter Skelter, even God Bless the Children of the Beast, you know, where Nick does like kind of a ripoff of Hotel California, but whatever. It's a great album. A lot of people would go, you know, purists who go, oh no, just the first album on Leather Records. And it's like, dude, that album sounded kind of tinny to me and kind of eh. You know, I like some of the songs on there. You know, Frankie died just the other night. Some say it was suicide, but we know. Frankie was actually Nicky when Nicky changed his name to Nicky from Frankie. That's why he was dead, right? You know, and then there was good stuff, but they started getting really popular and poppy, and, you know, I saw them a bunch of times. Great live show. Vince can't sing, but hey, so what? It's all for rock and roll. Let's talk about Metallica. Metallica. A lot of controversy with Metallica, especially after that Lou Reed shit. You know, James's voice is blown out. That's what happens when you go on tour for 5 years straight. And, you know, everybody warned him. All these lead singers of different bands and stuff over the years said, James, dude, you might want to take care of your voice like a little bit more than you are right now. But he didn't listen, and now he sounds awful. But back in 1986, I was, you know, a huge Ozzy fan still, even in the Ultimate Sin days where Ozzy was all frosted hair and, you know, playing like, you know, lightning strikes and stuff. And I went to see him at the Sports Arena in March of that year. And there's a band called Metallica opening up for him on the Master of Puppets tour. And I wasn't a big Metallica fan. I wasn't really into thrash. Some of my friends were. My friend Matt, that guy was into everything that was metal, everything that was thrash, everything that was new wave of British metal. You know, he used to do bootlegs and stuff, and he used to like play like Merciful Fate and stuff like that, and Megadeth and all that stuff for me. And I'd be like, whoa, that's metal. But then, you know, when Metallica was starting to get popular, you know, all the dirty kids were the ones that like listened to Metallica. I wasn't really into those kids, you know, the kids that, you know, show up to school with a fifth of Jack Daniels and drink it before lunchtime, and then, you know, end up in jail by the time they're 15. You know, I wasn't into that. That's stereotyping, isn't it? But hey, I was in high school, and that's the way it was. But I went in, and the cool thing about it was I met them out in the parking lot. I hung out with Metallica. I hung out with Cliff, and you know, this was about 6 months before Cliff died in that tragic bus accident. And he was super cool, super nice. They were all really cool, got their autographs and stuff, and then went in, and they came out, and they had their little Master Puppet set, and they blew me away. I walked into that place, into the Sports Arena, an Ozzy Osbourne fan, and I walked out a Metallica fan. Those guys, I went out the next day and bought all their albums, all three, you know, even the Jump in the Fire picture disc. I remember I bought that too. They were just unbelievable. I remember we were real close, and Cliff kept handing us beers down, and the bouncer kept knocking them out of his hand. And if you guys don't believe me, here, check this out. Oh, yeah, that's Cliff Burton's autograph. So, you know, yeah. So, anyways, Master Puppets to me, I mean, everything was going towards Master Puppets. You had the Kill 'Em All. I thought was awesome. It was amazing. Out of the, you know, the big fours albums, you know, like Anthrax and Megadeth and Slayer, I think theirs was the most polished. But to me, it was kind of juvenile. I mean, I love Whiplash and all those songs, but, you know, there was a lot of bang ahead, you know, kill. Yeah, okay. And then Ride the Lightning was like the evolutionary. Creeping Death and Call of Cthulhu. Wow. And, Ride the Lightning, of course, and Fight Fire with Fire and Fade to Black. For Whom the Bell Tolls. Wow. But to me, Master of Puppets was that final step, Hold on. I have a phone call. Hey, I'm back. I took my phone call. It was Paul Stanley. He wanted to be on the show, and I told him I had to pass. I told him that the whole thing where the guys in Kiss poured their blood into the Marvel comic was just a deal breaker, and I couldn't be involved. So, anyways, back to Master of Puppets. My favorite of the Metallica albums, just because I have friends that are all different ages and stuff. So to me, there's three types of Metallica fans. There's the younger crowd, and their introduction was probably the Black Album, which the Black Album was a huge success. It brought Metallica to the worldwide stage, and we as Metallica fans, previous Metallica fans, we had to sit back and watch and let our band, our personal favorite band, go into the, now they became the world's band, and it kind of, when some young punk comes up and goes, oh, that's my favorite band, and you're just like, really? Like, you have no idea. I remember back in the day, in 1990, I think it was 90, I went to see Judas Priest on the Painkiller tour, and I remember these little kids, Rob Halford came out driving the Harley and did Hellbent for Leather. And I was like freaking out. And I look over and these little kids are just sitting there. And then they would bust out into a song from Painkiller. And these kids would be like freaking out, like they thought Judas Priest was a brand new band. And it was like, I don't know, to me, it was like, when you're a fan of a band for a long time, and then to see newer fans and they don't really appreciate the older stuff, you're kind of like, But hey, to each his own, right? So anyways, these younger kids, they love, the Black Album with, Enter Sandman and Sad But True and Unforgiven and that wonderful, wonderful song, And Nothing Else Matters. Ooh. Of Wolf and Man. There's some great songs on that album. My Friend of Misery, the God That Failed. That's a great song. And then I had, then there's some of the people that are a little bit older, and their favorite Metallica album is And Justice for All, which And Justice for All, it had Jason Newsted on it. He replaced Cliff Burton. I actually saw him in 1988 at the LA Coliseum at Monsters of Rock with like Doc and Van Halen and the Scorpions, and James came out and he played like one chord, and they trashed the place. They had like a riot there. And I just remember they played like Harvester of Sorrow, and that was the only song they played off that album because it didn't come out for like another couple of months, and I think they were still practicing it. But a lot of people, that's their favorite band or their favorite album by Metallica. And, it's a good album. The songs are all super long. There's great songs on there, Shortest Straw, Blackened, Harvester of Sorrow, One, of course, which was their first music video, and that kind of started the ball rolling. I think a lot of people were like, oh, that's when they sold out. They came out with a video. And it's like, Metallica is in the music business. And I don't want to talk about the stuff they did with, like, Lou Reed, because I still don't understand that. I think Lars Ulrich made the comment, if Lou Reed calls you to do an album, you do it. Why? I don't like Lou Reed. I think Lou Reed's like whatever. There's people out there. Go ahead and worship Lou Reed. Boring. Listen to that album. Like, dude, I'd rather have my teeth drilled. So. But anyways, there's people that love that album. But to me, it was like, I think it was just truer with Cliff, because you listen to Master Puppets and you have Battery, you have The Thing That Should Not Be, you have probably one of my favorite Metallica songs of all time, which is Sanitarium. You have obviously the title track and Disposable Heroes and Leper Messiah and Damage Incorporated. Even the instrumental Orion is awesome. So I think from beginning to end, that album is just, it's a statement. And people talk about them selling out. Oh, they sold out. Well, if you have an issue with them, you could drive up to James Hetfield's palatial mansion. I'm sure you won't get very far, but you could probably have an in-depth chat with the security guy as he's strapping on the zip ties and spraying you with pepper spray about how Metallica sold out. But bottom line is, still one of the greatest metal bands. A little inconsistent. We won't talk about Saint Anger, hopefully ever. If we do, it'll probably be a whole show on how not to make an album. But hey, that's the way it goes. Let's talk about Sabotage. And the coolest thing about Sabotage is, you can see this really close and up front and personal, but Ozzy is, this is Geezer. He's got a cane. Tony sitting down. Yeah, Tony sitting down. You see Tony sitting down. Bill Ward is wearing a leather jacket and like skin tight, like red spandex pants. And underneath it, he has like a checkered diaper on. A black and white checkered pair of drawers that looks like a diaper. And then the most mystifying part is, Ozzy's got some really cool boots going on, but he's wearing a dress. And the really cool part is you can see the backside of it. And the cool thing is you can really see Bill Ward's underwear. Sabotage to me is the perfect Black Sabbath album. Why? Because it just flows. All other Black Sabbath albums with Ozzy, they had their ups and their downs and their peaks and their valleys, where Sabotage to me, it was cohesive. They had taken like 2.5 years off. They were having a bunch of legal issues. That's why they have the song The Writ, because apparently, according to them, they couldn't even go on stage without getting served a writ or a subpoena, because they were being sued by their ex-manager. But for years, Mr. Iommi was always putting on little blurbs on the albums, and even on into when he took over Black Sabbath, and it was really just featuring Tony Iommi. He had to show you what a great guitar player he was. It seemed to me like he was kind of he felt a little threatened by all the other guitar players out there. Tony, you're a rock legend, so don't worry about it. Anyways, he'd been doing it for years, adding little blurbs onto each of the albums and stuff. And most of the time it did not work. Most of the time it was like, what was that? If you listen to Volume 4, he has a little thing on there called FX. Wow. If you want to lose your mind and start rubbing feces on your body and end up in the corner drooling, listen to that about 50 times in a row. Yeah, whoa. It's like listening to Revolution number 9 over and over. Number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9. Yeah, it was awful. Anyways, but on Sabotage, he actually got it right, and he did these little acoustical pieces, and they were flowing, and it all flowed together. A Hole in the Sky, Superstar, Thrill of It All, Megalomania, Am I Going Insane Radio. That whole album is just phenomenal. A lot of people will say, oh, what about Paranoid? Paranoid, is obviously one of those stellar landmark albums. You could totally tell the difference between the first album, which cost like $10 to make, and they made it really quick, and they did a bunch of song suites and kind of hid some really good songs like NIB in the middle of a song suite. Wicked World was awesome, but still kind of juvenile and kind of, it sounded like college kids playing death metal or doom metal, which didn't even exist back then. They invented it. But then all of a sudden you moved into Paranoid, where, wow, it was super polished, and it just, had War Pigs and Iron Man, Paranoid, Hand of Doom, You put the needle in. Geezer was getting a little heavy with his lyrics at that time. Electric Funeral, um, phenomenal. That's a great song. And then you got Planet Caravan. Wah, 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 wah. And Rat Salad. Uh, you know, which was basically just Bill Ward showing you that, hey, he's a really good drummer, and he was probably just like kind of sticking his tongue out at Bonzo at that point, like, hey, Bonzo, but and Ferris wore boots, of course, which is, the lyrics on that are just hilarious. But for consistency and overall effect, I know Paranoid's good, but come on, it has Rat Salad on it. They built up to it. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath was close, but Sabotage was it. And then the wheels came off, and then they came out with like Technical Ecstasy, which, wow, Technical Ecstasy, your favorite album? Is it? Is it? I didn't think so. And then Never Say Die, which I believe had Bill Ward singing a song on it. Ooh. If your drummer is singing songs on your album at some point, there should be alarm bells going off. Red flags, right? Okay. The Mob Rules. And also Heaven and Hell, of course. But I don't have the cover to it because I met Geezer and had him autograph that, and I sent it to my cousin in New York. So, like with the Ozzy albums, I just kind of take Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules and link them together and just have one great, giant, awesome Dio fest with Black Sabbath. I mean, Dio reinvented Sabbath. They got a singer that could write lyrics, so Geezer didn't have to do that anymore. He could concentrate just on, the music. And Ronnie just brought everything to the table. He was stellar. You listen to that, Neon Nights and Children of the Sea. It was one of my favorite songs of all time. Die Young and Heaven and Hell and Lady Evil. Those songs were phenomenal. And it sounded so different than something Sabbath had done before. It was so melodic and just conquering. And then Mob Rules, just turn up the night, and Voodoo and Sign of the Southern Cross. And one of my favorite songs on there that a lot of people overlook is Country Girl. I fell in love with a country girl born in sunshine. She was up from another world just to snatch your soul away. I promised I wouldn't do that again, but apparently I lied. They had a little snippet of Mob Rules in that film, the animated film Heavy Metal. And that kind of pushed that album around a little bit. But overall, man, you take those two albums, those two of the best metal albums of all time. And just, with Ronnie belting out those lyrics. I got to see him in 2007 with Megadeth opening, and then Heaven and Hell, which was the new version of Black Sabbath since Sharon Osbourne bought the name Black Sabbath. Whatever. And to watch Ronnie stand up on stage and sing those songs, and he sang them flawlessly, and to see, Tony standing next to him with his little purple glasses on, and to see Geezer standing there with his bass pointed straight up in the air just playing, and to watch Vinny play. I'm not going to lie, when Vinny did his drum solo, I went to the bathroom and then I bought another beer because that's what 45-minute drum solos are for. But, just to watch that, it was like a piece of history, to see him. And then, of course, Ronnie passed away after that. But I did have the pleasure of meeting Ronnie a couple times, and I can tell you, without a doubt, he was a true gentleman. He was very short, too, but he had the voice of a guy that was 10 feet tall. So, it looks to me like this album cover has a man bent over with a bunch of sticks on his back. I'm not really sure what that means. It's like Hey, look at me, I've got sticks on me back. Led Zeppelin 4. If you don't like Led Zeppelin 4, I don't even know why we're having this conversation. Led Zeppelin, did they have a bad album? I mean, Coda, that was kind of after the point, but like, dude, it's Zeppelin, I think Stairway to Heaven, is one of those songs that like kind of like Hotel California or Back in Black, where they played it into the ground. But still, I pop it in, I pop in the headphones and put it on, and the part where Plant just starts singing at the end where they're wailing, and he's just like, and there's a window down the road, our shadows taller than a soul. I mean, forget about it. It's amazing. Battle of Evermore, a little Tolkien in there, a little, in the darkest depths of Mordor, I met a girl so fair, but then Gollum, an evil one. I'm going to stop now because I can't sing that. Neither can Robert Plant nowadays, so that's cool. Rock and Roll, Black Dog, When the Levee Breaks, Going to California, Four Sticks. That whole album is amazing. So, true pioneers of hard rock and heavy metal. You take a mortal man and put him in control. Megadeth. I was never really a big, huge Megadeth fan until later on. I mean, I remember seeing them open for Judas Priest on the Painkiller tour, and it was actually the Countdown to Extinction tour with Marty Friedman. And I remember Dave Mustaine coming out, and he introduced the band, and then he introduced himself, and he's like, "You know who I am." And I was like, wow, like, who is this guy? And he has issues. It wasn't until I heard the song Use the Man off of Cryptic Writings that I actually started to listen to Megadeth a lot. And then like I went back and listened to all their stuff. I do have their old demo, from back in the day when they had the No Life Till Leather demo from Metallica. And then I think I have an Exodus demo with Kirk. And then I have the Megadeth demo where they do mechanics and stuff. And, I think Kerry King played on it. But, Megadeth is like, it's one of those things that's overshadowed by Metallica. Dave Mustaine, he's got kind of an attitude, but I'll tell you what, Dave Mustaine never lets me down. I've never been super disappointed by anything he's put out. Super Collider, I was pushing it. He had some Dokken-like lyrics going on there, but otherwise, he's pretty consistent. I probably like more Megadeth songs than I do Metallica songs. Dave, he'll lie to you and tell you he's over it, but James Hetfield's worth $170 million. He's known worldwide. I don't. Dave's still rich too, so who cares? Past a certain point, who cares? You can still say you never sold your soul. You never came out with Saint Anger, so Dave, you're one up on them. A lot of people like the early stuff. I think it's kind of juvenile, just like Kill 'Em All. I think, like even into Peace Cells, some of those songs are kind of stupid. Especially into So Far, So Good, So What. Some of those songs were really bad, but Dave was doing like a lot of drugs and stuff. Then you got Marty Friedman, and they did Rust in Peace, and I love Rust in Peace. I mean, Holy Wars, Devil's Island. There's great songs on there, but it just, is The Conjuring your favorite song? Is it? Is The Conjuring is your favorite song? So you can ask yourself and say, hey, Megadeth, I love Megadeth. Dude, I love The Conjuring. There were some weak spots on there. Polaris, it was a cool song, but to me, like, Countdown is flawless. Has Skin of Your Teeth on it, has Countdown, of course, has one of the greatest metal riffs ever written in Symphony of Destruction. I mean, it's super easy to play, but it's just crunchy. It's metal. You got Sweating Bullets. There's so many good songs on this album. It's unreal. So, I even like some of their later stuff too. And there's always a few songs on every album now that comes out that's just it still captures my attention. Even up to 13, I think there were some great songs on there. So, you know, I love Megadeth. So yeah, what about some Judas Priest? Now, this isn't the album I'm going to talk about. This is Unleashed in the East with a lot of people. A lot of people don't like Unleashed in the East, but I will tell you, if you could get the remastered version with the extra songs on it, it's phenomenal. Some say it's doctored, whatever. Rob Halford swears that they just added backing vocals and maybe touched up a little things, but still, if you've seen Rob Halford live, and I have, he can sing, so like don't pretend like he couldn't. Judas Priest, my favorite of all time from Judas Priest is going to be Screaming for Vengeance, and I think the reason why is because Screaming for Vengeance starts off with the Hellion, moves into Electric Eye, and it doesn't stop until it gets to the end, and you've been rocked. You got Another Thing Coming, and Bloodstone, and Take These Chains, and Devil's Child, and that album is just amazing. So, deal with it, I like some stuff off Defender. I thought Defender was still a good album. Love Bites, one of my favorite metal Judas Priest songs. Even the old stuff, of course, British Steel, Breaking the Law, and, Living After Midnight. But I think, as far as cohesion, and as far as like just straightforward rocking, I think, that was their masterpiece. But you still have, I like the old albums too, when you get to Sad Wings of Destiny and you got Victim of Changes. A whiskey woman, don't you know that you are driving me insane? Yeah. I'll never do that again. Ripper. And then they would do something like Epitaph. And you'd be like, they would derail the album. They were kind of yeah, Stained Class, Sin After Sin, Dissident Aggressor, there's great songs. But overall, even nowadays, Angel of Retribution, there are some great songs on there, and even their newest album they put out, I thought was pretty good. The Nostradamus album, I wasn't sitting around waiting for Judas Priest to come out with this 2-disc magnum opus on the life of Nostradamus, so that one kind of went over a little tame with me. But overall, dude, I met Rob Halford once a couple years ago at the NAMM show, and I remember, just talking to him. He was a really nice guy. He was really cool. He had a great accent. I was like, hey, you live in San Diego? Because he lives in San Diego now. And he's like, oh, yes, San Diego, my home away from the freezing cold of London. I thought that was pretty cool. Some people despise Rat. I have a friend that just hates Rat, hates them. Now, in 1984, I went across country to from San Diego all the way to Buffalo, New York, and in the back of my parents' van, and we went there for a family reunion. And I brought 3 cassette tapes on my Walkman, and it was Bark at the Moon, it was The Last in Line by Ryan James Dio, and it was Out of the Cellar by Rat. I listened to those albums like 200 million times, so they're part of my soul. And then when I got to New York, don't hate me, but I actually bought Midnight Madness from Night Ranger. Yeah, I was a kid. I was like 14. So. And, hey, there's some good songs on there, so don't, I need a touch of madness. I didn't buy it for Sister Christian, so whatever. Anyways, there's great songs in there. Oh, and by the way, David Coverdale rubbing her body all over the car in the Here I Go Again video, Tawny Katane right there. Apparently she was banging Mr. Robin Crosby before the whole White Snake incident. So, but there's great songs on there. The only problem with Rat, they kind of get lumped in with the hair metal because they, technically were. And they were in the big MTV, that time where all the MTV videos were coming out, and of course they had Round and Round with Milton Berle, and they had Wanted Man and Back for More, which, had Motley Crue and stuff in there because they were all hanging out together and stuff. But this is a solid album. There's some great songs on there. Lack of Communication, She Wants Money, She Wants Money. um, there's not a bad song on that album. If you forgot about it or you haven't heard it in a long time, go ahead and pop it in because you'll be surprised. It's really good. It still stands up. So let's talk about the Glare. First of all, if we talk about awesome album covers, we're talking about Derek Riggs and Iron Maiden. There's two Iron Maiden albums that I love. One is, of course, Number of the Beast with Mr. Bruce Dickinson. And before Bruce Dickinson, there was Paul Di'Anno. And when they were in the new wave of British metal, they came out with an album, their second album. Their first album was amazing, but their second album was more polished. It had Adrian Smith in it. Ides of March, and it goes right into Wrathchild, and then it just, doesn't stop. And there's such great songs on there. And Genghis Khan, and Innocent Exile, and of course Killers, and Murders in the Rue Morgue. Wow. And then Paul Di'Anno was a drunk, and he was a boozer, and I heard he was like really kind of abusive to the other band members and stuff, so they booted him, and they went and got Samson lead singer Mr. Bruce Dickinson, and he came in and they did the Number of the Beast. And I will tell you, the Number of the Beast, controversial. It's about Satan. Not really. Although it does have Satan on the cover. That is Satan right there, apparently. Eddie and Satan. Eddie. Yeah. A few years ago, they redid the CD and they added a track called Total Eclipse. I think that's what it's called. It's awful. I don't know why they added it back in. I think it got kicked off. If it got kicked off in the beginning, it's probably best it should have stayed off. Otherwise, that album is amazing. Children of the Damned, Run to the Hills. Right? Even Jacob's like, yeah, Run to the Hills, dude. Number of the Beast, Gangland, 22 Acacia Avenue, The Prisoner. I am not a number. I am a free man. Listen to it. It's in there. Excellent. Some people say Peace of Mind, but I think Peace of Mind is like probably the first, 5 or 6 songs, and then after that it's like kind of derails itself. Is Sun and Steel your favorite song? Is it? To Tame a Land? To Tame a Land is your favorite Iron Maiden song? Really? Quest for Fire? Quest for Fire is your favorite Iron Maiden song. Well, if it is, maybe Peace of Mind is more your cup of tea, but I'm going to say The Pure is, and plus it was the last album with Clyde Burr on it before Nico took over the helm on drums. But great album. Just a great, great album. Let's talk about Kiss. Kiss! I didn't listen to a lot of Kiss when I was a kid because my mom wouldn't let me. They were evil. They were knights in Satan's service or whatever. I remember when I was a kid, we were at Sears one day, the department store. My mom was getting her car work done. And it was back in the 70s, so, you could, my mom would let me go look at the record section while she was getting her car work done. And, back then in the 70s, there was Record Central, was Sears, because they didn't have a lot of department stores. And I remember my mom came up behind me and she was like, hey, you ready to go? And I was like, I found a copy of Kiss Alive 2. Kiss Alive 2. And I remember I held this up and I said, Mom, can I get this? And my mom went, I think she's still making that noise. When you're 7 years old and you show your mom a picture of Gene Simmons drenched in blood and sweat, you're probably not going to get a good response. I may have asked, just, hey, Mom, can I get this copy of the Satanic Bible and maybe later we could go bathe in goat's blood and sacrifice, people to the devil? I mean, that's basically what I was asking. I was 7 years old holding up this album, and my mom was like, so I didn't listen to a lot of Kiss. A friend of mine was a huge Kiss fan. His entire room was plastered in Kiss, and I remember he used to make tapes for me. And so, like, I had a really weird introduction to Kiss. Um, and it was in the early 80s. I got some Elder in there. And so, but I will tell you, like, probably, Destroyer would be the one album that I would say, oh, I mean, Destroyer. It's got Detroit Rock City. It's got God of Thunder on it. Shout It Out Loud, Do You Love Me? It's got Beth on it. But it also has Great Expectations and Flaming Youth. Oh, but it had King of the Nighttime World on it too. So, that was the first part of Kiss. There was Kiss Alive 1, that was the first 3 albums, and then Kiss Alive 2 was the second 3 albums, and it started with Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, and then it went to Love Gun. And Kiss was a household name at this point. Bless you, Jacob. Oh boy, he's sneezing. He's watching Fantasia right now while I do this, so that's cool. So I'm gonna, I'd say Destroyer. It's not their perfect album. I like The Elder. I think musically, The Elder is probably the best thing Kiss ever did. People are gonna freak out. But there's been a lot of people pining for them to do like it live, in its entirety. I don't think they can. People didn't understand The Elder when it came out. It just had Paul Stanley's hand reaching out for a door knocker, and it was like very confusing to fans. It didn't seem very Kiss, but Mr. Blackwell, wow, even Dark Light, the song Ace Frehley like phoned in because he like hated their guts by then. There's some great songs on there. Also, too, going even back to like the original Kiss, that first album, it had Cold Gin, it had Deuce and Strutter, Firehouse, Black Diamond, and that 100,000 Years, that was a great album. I could glean good stuff off of all the early Kiss stuff, and then it started to break down, of course, and they went disco for a while. But even up to Creatures of the Night. Creatures of the Night with Eric Carr, I mean, dude, that was a heavy album. A lot of people overlook that album. Rock and Roll Hell is one of my favorite Kiss songs of all time. Dude, I Love It Loud, Creatures of the Night. I don't know why it had Ace on the cover, because I don't even think he played on that album. I think Vinnie Vincent wrote all the songs and played all the songs. So, but then again, Peter Criss was on the cover of Unmasked, and I think Anton Fig was the drummer on that album. So Kiss was very deceptive and very dysfunctional at that point. So who knows? And then after they took their makeup off, there's some songs that I like that they did, but as far as they were using song doctors after Lick It Up and stuff, and it was like, yeah, whatever. I liked them with their makeup on. But then again, when they slapped their makeup back on and they did the reunion, Psycho Circus, and then Sonic Boom. If you want to keep giving Gene Simmons money, go ahead. Why don't you just mail him a check? Because if you listen to Sonic Boom and you're like, hey, Sonic Boom's awesome. No, it's not. It's everything that's wrong with the music industry. It's everything that's wrong with Kiss. They slap their images on M&Ms and Mr. Potato Heads, and they got some guy playing Ace and some guy playing Peter, which that's cool because those guys are, I guess, not really cool with with the powers that be, Gene and Paul, anymore. But if you want to listen to a 60-something-year-old guy up there talking about banging chicks, I don't. I'm sorry, Gene. Yeah, you're rich, but if you weren't, you wouldn't be scoring nothing. So you're kind of scaly and Gross. So let's move on. Anyways, let's talk about Queensryche. 1980s, early 1980s. There was a magazine called Circus Magazine. It was everything that had to do with rock and roll. You don't want to sound like David Lee Roth. And in the back of that magazine, they had ads and stuff, and you could order the EP from Queensryche on their, first 4 songs. So my friend Spencer ordered it, and we played it over and over and over again. It was 4 songs. It was Queen of the Reich. It was Blinded, Knight Rider, and The Lady Wore Black. And it was amazing. And I remember listening to that and just going, who is this guy, this vocalist? He's amazing. This guy's, and then The Warning. I think I saw them. They opened for Kiss on the Animalized tour. And on and on. And, I like all the early Queensryche stuff, even when their hair was really tall and, they were doing Rage for Order and they were wearing all those strange clothes and stuff. But I got to tell you, Operation Mindcrime, that's it, man. It's a concept album, and it's I don't want to keep overusing the word flawless, but it's flawless, from beginning to end. Musically, it's just DeGarmo, just Wilton. It's beautiful and beautiful. It's beautiful. Spreading the disease, Operation Mindcrime, and welcome to Operation Mindcrime. My favorite part on the whole album is Sweet Sister Mary, which runs in at about how many minutes is that? Sweet Sister Mary. It's like 10.5 minutes. And, it's where Jeff Tate sits there and trades vocals with the chick that's playing Sister Mary, and it's amazing. I had a friend of mine, Roy, we used to go, kill her. That's all you have to do. Kill Mary and get the priest as well. It used to be our code word for coolness. But anyways, it was right before Empire. Empire came out and kind of made Queensryche a little popular. Silent Lucidity kind of stuff. Still a great album. Some phenomenal songs on there. Jet City Woman and Empire. You built an empire. But to me, that's truly their great album. Let's talk about AC/DC, because you have to talk about AC/DC because they're the best 3-chord band that's ever. I go Highway to Hell, and the reason why is because Highway to Hell they were building up their popularity, and if Bon Scott wouldn't have drank himself to death or drank himself stupid and then froze to death, maybe the world would be a different place. But here's a band whose lead singer croaks, and what do? They go get a new lead singer. They come out with an album that turns into the greatest, one of the most. Hold on. Let me take my brain out and put it back in. Okay. Rewind. Okay. Bon Scott croaks. They go out and get their new lead singer, Brian Johnson, of course, and then they come out with Back in Black. They dedicate it to Bon Scott, and it becomes one of the biggest selling albums of all time. And it's up there with like Thriller and the Eagles' greatest hits. It's crazy, right? See, Jacob's like, ow! I love that album. Back in Black's great, but to me, Highway to Hell, man, and Highway to Hell, when you look at it, dude, it had Highway to Hell. Girls Got Rhythm. She got the backstreet rhythm. Walk All Over You. Touch Too Much. Touch Too Much is where he goes, like I knew it would. And he sounded like Roger Rabbit for a second there, right? Right, Jacob? Shot Down in Flames, Love Hungry Man, Night Prowler. I mean, dude, this is a great album. AC/DC had some great songs in their early stuff. They had TNT and they had, Problem Child and, all those really cool songs. especially like Dirty Deeds. You know, Dirty Deeds, done cheap. And Big Balls and stuff, but you know, a lot of them that kind of melded together. If You Want Blood and stuff like that, a whole lot of Rosie. But to me, like, you know, it would have been interesting to see what they would have been if Bond hadn't croaked out. But at the same time, we're still thankful to have Brian Johnson, and you know, they came out with a lot of great albums after that. Deep Purple. And this is Perfect Strangers, and I'm going to pick Perfect Strangers because music, especially, you know, any kind of music, even metal and, you know, pop music or whatever, it's very personal. And it depends, too, on what year you got into it. And sometimes I'll be talking to people, and I'll say, hey, what's your favorite album? And they'll tell me an album, and I'll be like, wow, really? And then you find out, well, because that was part of their childhood, you know. And it became very dear to them. One of, you know, I have a lot of albums that I listened to when I was a kid. Paranoid. My dad used to play Paranoid all the time on the record player. Madman Across the Water by Elton John. That was one of my dad's favorite albums of all time, and I love that album. You know, my mom listened to Beatles and Barry Manilow, and you know, I still love the Painter Wagon soundtrack. You know, with Clint Eastwood and Lee Marvin singing songs. Like, you know, I grew up with that, so it's personal to me. And the same with this stuff, you know, when you listen to metal and stuff. Deep Purple, I wasn't even really into Deep Purple. I didn't really get exposed to Deep Purple. I probably listened to Blackmore more in Rainbow than I did in Deep Purple. So, kind of Perfect Strangers was kind of like my first intro to Deep Purple. And, you know, it was on MTV. They came out with the video, and you're just like, what is this? You know, you're like, oh, it's Ian Gillan. And you're like, oh, it's Richie Blackmore and Roger Glover and Ian Pace and John Lord. The famous version of Deep Purple, because there were so many incantations of Deep Purple. But to me, like, you know, I know you can go back to Machine Head and say, hey, this is Deep Purple. You know, they had Highway Star. They had... You know, Space Truckin' and, you know, Smoke on the Water, you know. But to me, my favorite is going to be Perfect Strangers. I thought they came together and they were getting along, and you could feel that there was a good vibe when they made that album. It was really good. Knocking at Your Back Door, Perfect Strangers, Gypsy's Kiss. I can listen to that album over and over. I have, and it's awesome. So, and, you know, now Richie's playing Renaissance Fair, and he's doing the dulcimer. Okay. Got to talk about Van Halen. Van Halen, Women and Children First. And now when you talk about Van Halen, you talk about the first 4 Van Halen albums, right? Because they were recorded live. You could feel it. You could feel that live feel. You could hear them messing up. You knew they were wasted. You know, and it had a great feel. And Eddie was playing stuff that no one had ever heard. You know, is Eddie the greatest guitar player of all time? You know, that's a debate that could go on, and it's all about personal preference, you know. But Eddie came up with stuff and sounds and just rock and feel that no one had ever come up with. Gene Simmons from Kiss kind of discovered them in the late 70s or mid 70s. And I guess he paid for their demo or something, and then Warner Brothers signed him. And the first Van Halen album was amazing. The cool thing about Van Halen is, you know, they were hard rock, but, you know, David Lee Roth wanted to be a lounge singer, so they would do songs that normally wouldn't even make sense on a rock album, you know. They covered Donna Summer songs and stuff, you know. But as far as Van Halen, Women and Children First, I think, you know, the first 4 albums, you know, before they became hugely successful, and then, you know, and of course, it had the picture of Dave, you know, strapped to a fence, which was weird, but yeah, probably could have done without that. But dude, Cradle Will Rock, Everybody Wants Some, Fools. You know, Lost Control, Take Your Whiskey Home. Would you take your whiskey home? And then, you know, Could This Be Magic? You know, they just kind of started singing songs that were just amazing. Someone's gonna do the dishes right now, so cool. Rainbow Rising, and there's a lot of good Rainbow stuff, but the second one, um, they had like Terror Woman, Stargazer, Starstruck, Run with the Wolf. I think out of all of them, I mean, I like the Bob Daisley, Cozy Powell, Tony Carey version, where Long Live Rock and Roll. That had some great songs on it. And then also the original one, and then it went into like, Ronnie left and we got Graham Bonnet and then Joe Turner and then, whatever. Became another version of Deep Purple where you just kept losing personnel. Any band that, goes through band members like that, somebody needs to look around and say, oh, was it Richie Blackmore? This is definitely one of those albums that's just amazing. Ronnie did some great work with Rainbow, and to me personally, this is the one. Plus, that's a really cool, album cover, even though it's very rainbowy, which nowadays might stand for something else. Oh, A Night at the Opera. A Night at the Opera by Queen. Queen had some great albums, did some rocket stuff. Brian May, one of the guitar gods of all time. A Night at the Opera, Prophet song. People probably don't even know what that song is, but what a great song. And, Death on Two Legs, 39. And of course, everybody knows Bohemian Rhapsody, right? So I'm not going to sing that, but I see a little silhouette of a man. No, I'm not going to do it. But anyways, definitely one of the great albums. And then there's a couple albums I don't have the covers for because I couldn't find them, but a couple albums I want to just mention real quick. Of course, the Scorpions. Love the Scorpions. A lot of people don't know about their earlier stuff because they didn't really get a lot of good press here in America. Jacob's over there jamming on his keyboard. Some of their early stuff, Fly the Rainbow, and Speedy's Coming and stuff like that. And then, Lonesome Crow or Crow, it depends on who you talk to. That came out in 72 with, Michael Schenker. I think he was like 12 years old, and his big brother, Rudy. They came out with the Scorpions. That album's not that awesome at all, but I have it. But then there was some good stuff, Taken by Force and then Virgin Killers. The bad thing about the Scorpions was I don't know if it was them or their record company, but they continued to insist on putting like really controversial stuff on the album covers, and they weren't really well received in America. So it kind of hurt them a lot. And, like Virgin Killers, they had like a naked little girl on the cover and, the Regretful. Plus, Yuli sang a lot of the songs. Yuli John Roth, the original guitar player, sang a lot of songs, and he has an interesting voice. But there was some good stuff. In Trance, that was one of my favorite songs. There's a number of great songs out there, and like a lot of people have looked at Yuli and used him as a reference to their guitar playing. I know Yngwie loves Sails of Charon. But then they became the second part of the Scorpions' career. They got Matthias Jabs, and they kind of moved into the actual popular realms. And even though they still came out with album covers that were controversial, they started to gain popularity. And I think it was because they switched to Mercury from MCA. That's probably what happened. But of course, Love Drive had a couple of songs in there. Michael Schenker kind of rejoined the band. Loving You Sunday Morning and Love Drive, and then they came out with Animal Magnetism and then Blackout, and then from there they just were rolling. I would pick Blackout probably as my favorite, just because it had No One Like You and Blackout, and it just what a great album. Like everything else, I tend to just make my own compilation, so I just pick the good and the bad from everything. Love at First Sting's probably like their big album, their huge album. That's a great album. That has a lot of great songs on it. Rock You Like a Hurricane's probably been played like 200,000 times. I think the Blue Angels use it. They even made fun of it on The Simpsons. What was it? Sideshow Bob is like, yeah, watching jets take off to rock you like a hurricane, you know. And of course, Live at First Sting, which is one of the great live albums of all time. One day, you know, on the show, I'll go over like awesome live albums. We'll talk about those. But you know, the Scorpions are an important part of heavy metal, and even their last album, Sting in the Tail, I was impressed. You know, there was a lot of years that I kind of missed in between. I have all the albums, you know, they're downloaded, but I definitely missed a lot of the stuff because, you know, it was all right. It blended together. There were some good songs and a lot of bad stuff, but that last album that they came out with was pretty rocking, you know. So always gotta love the Scorpions, and I've seen them live, and I gotta tell you, they always put on an excellent show, and they were super loud. Like super loud. So another album that I want to talk about. We mentioned Tawny Kitaen earlier. Let's talk about Whitesnake. And you know, Whitesnake gets a bad rep because, you know, they came out with the Whitesnake album back in the mid '80s. Neil Murray and John Sykes and Dave Coverdale and what was that? I know it hurts you to talk about Whitesnake, but we'll get through it. Let's talk about Slide It In. You're not gonna let Daddy finish this? Are you? Yeah? No? He doesn't. He's not a big Whitesnake fan. I think yeah. So anyways, Whitesnake had an album called Slide It In. It had Cozy Powell on drums. I saw them live. They actually opened for Quiet Riot like in '83, and they put on a phenomenal show. Like Cozy Powell was out there playing with broomsticks, you know, just blowing us out, and it was truly amazing. But I thought Slide It In was their last pure album before they kind of sold out a little bit and started redoing songs from the Saint and Sinner days and strapping them on as new material, which, like, Here I Go Again, you guys want to look back, yeah, that had been done before. They just kind of spruced it up, made it sound better, apparently. But if you watch Slide It In, Straight to the Top, you know, everything was about sex with them. But that album was great. They had a lot of good stuff on there, and I thought that was probably their strongest album. And then let's talk about the very final album, and I'm sure I missed a bunch of albums. Yeah? Are you sure? Are you sure? What's the last album, Jacob? Back in the day, there used to be a label called Shrapnel Records, and Shrapnel Records used to come out with all the shredders, like Steeler with Yngwie, and Cacophony with Marty Friedman and Jason Becker, and Joey Tafola from Jag Panzer, you know, had, like, you know, all the shredders had their albums. And they came out with an album by a band called Wasp. Is Wasp making you cry? I mean, they're later Wasp, maybe, but not early Wasp. So their first album came out, was just self-titled Wasp, and still to this day, one of my favorite metal albums of all time. Blackie Lawless and company, and Chris Holmes, and, you know, Randy Piper, and they just came out, and they had, you know, they had this stage show where they threw raw meat and dripped blood all over each other, and they had naked chicks like strapped to stuff, and they're beating them and stuff like that. You know, they kind of ripped off Alice Cooper a lot. But that album was nasty, and it was filthy, and it was raw, and it was cool. The song Tormentor is probably one of my favorite songs ever. They did have the Animal EP, which had Animal, and then it had Show No Mercy and Paint It Black, which is a cover of the Rolling Stones song, and that actually got added into the remastered version of the first Wasp album, and it's really good. I mean, if you want to hear a really cool version of Paint It Black, I know Anvil copied it too, but that's a great version of it. Animal, you know, that was purely like shock value, but you had On Your Knees, you had I Want to Be Somebody, Love Machine, right? Love Machine. Whoa, yeah, and Tormentor and School Days and Apparently, Jacob is screaming. Anyways, this is Matt Lortz, Matt's Metal Show. That's my list of top favorite albums. I know it went forever, and hopefully people will look through this and maybe you find something interesting. I'll keep it going, and we'll talk about different stuff, and hopefully Jacob will pipe in and let us know what he thinks. But for Matt's Metal Show, stay metal, people. Stay metal.